there. And now we have Professor Malafina to even improve even more our knowledge on the topic. So welcome to everyone. So let's move on to the first presentation, which is Professor Malaspina, who's scheduled to speak first. Mr. Malaspina, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Beatrice. I am going to be sharing the slides. The technicians are supposed to be sharing the slides on the screen. Yes, there you go. Thank you. I would like to, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to have been invited. I'd like to greet my two colleague panelists, Jens and Anna. This is not a bibliography review, but it's an action review. That's why I called it State of the Art in Brazil and Bee Protection, especially when it comes to pesticides. And this is the topic I'll be dealing with. Next slide, please. We know that bees, as any other species, is exposed to plague, bacteria, fungi, and viruses. There are a number of viruses. Viruses are really in vogue these days. Protozoarium, insects, and bees are also exposed to predators. In Brazil, there's a major advantage because these contaminants I mentioned, the Brazilian bees are very resistant. So it's an interesting type of bee. So we have these situations, but our colonies are not so much at risk for these reasons. What is the main problem in Brazil for bees is pesticides. This has happened also in the United States and Europe with the CCD, the colony collapse disorder. We don't know exactly what the main cause is, but maybe there's a risk that pesticides may be involved. And in Brazil, in addition to that, we have a deforestation issue, which is a very serious problem. Bees lose their sources of food and places of dwelling, and climate change also is quite complicated here in Brazil. A number of studies to demonstrate that, as well as pesticides, which is going to be the focus of my presentation. Next slide, please. So pesticides here in Brazil really started around 2008 when we started to face in the interior of the state of São Paulo a massive death of bees. I collected all the data in a city called Boa Esperança do Sul in the interior of São Paulo. And as of 2008, a number of cases, many cases of massive death until 2020. So these pictures, all these points are dead, 400 colonies dead in 24 hours. This was the first reported case. And here inside the colony, all these are dead bees. So then we started to carry out a number of studies here at the lab, both in terms of behavior as well as morphology. Within morphology, the effects on cells, as well as proteomic analysis of the brain. And then we used proteomes and metabolomes. This shows the proteins of bee, the effects of protein on a bee brain with pesticides. And since then, a number of publications in specialized uh, reviews. And so these report the effects of herbicides and pesticides on bees. So these are very, very recent studies on the problem. In addition to research that we carry out in our lab, we have other actions in the field to try and minimize the issues in the field, maybe not solve it, but at least minimize it, but also working on legislation. Professor Roberto from the Federal University of São Carlos next to us, and also working in terms of government action to protect bees. There are many, many, many actions, but I am going to summarize the main ones. We have some field projects with companies, especially production honey, uh, um, pesticide production companies. And we made an experiment a few years ago trying to identify the behavior, death, and contamination of bees when there is aerial application of pesticides. And then another large experiment with financed by these companies, which is called MAP, participative bee mapping, in the state of São Paulo. Next slide, please. So we mapped by georeference all the various colonies, and then we use a model colony, and we applied in Brazil. There is a legislation not for pesticides, but for protected areas where you have to respect 250 meters of distance of applying these products in the protection areas. So we used this model because there is no legislation for pesticides, and then we used the products, we sprayed it by airplane, respecting the 250 meters. So we realized with respecting all the government standards, stray got to 60, 70 meters and it didn't reach the colonies, but it did reach part of the protection area where other insects and other bees may be, and that could cause a smaller problem. So we're trying to see exactly what the right distance is. Then in 2014, with companies, we called it Colmeia Viva, live colonies or hives, beehives, to map exactly what was happening when it came to the death of bees. So we have a free telephone number, 0800 number, which was for people to call, and within 24 hours, a qualified, skilled team went to the field, bringing samples back to the lab to study what pesticide was maybe leading to the death of the bees. And we also carried out a survey around the surrounding areas, what type of culture, what type of pesticide was used. So we carried out a whole history, and this mapping was between 2014 and 2017. And we realized that there were a number of inadequate ways of applying the pesticides. Farmers were not complying with legislation and were not complying with the notices in the products. And so they were inadequately applied. And after this conclusion, we carried out another a study now no longer only in the state of Sao Paulo, but we have a technical assistance. So farmers call the 0800 number, but that's not just to collect samples because that was the 4-year project. Now there is a technical assistant directly with farmers and honey producers. Now we are carrying out EAD training to increase awareness and pollination, as well as good practices, because a number of farmers lack training in agricultural good practices. And we also have an app that is being developed to be launched that is going to help informing farmers. So this is for pesticide companies, and this is just one study because there are many other actions. These are the main ones. As to government action, we, myself and Roberta, together with the pesticide companies, Anna has participated in a number of our meetings. We have worked together with the environmental agency, IBAMA, a project in 2013 and until 2017 with a guidance for ecotoxicological risk assessment of pesticides for bees. In Brazil, it did not have any models. This is the first for any species in Brazil in terms of this risk. This was carried out for bees. It's similar to models used in Europe and the United States. We didn't copy the US or Europe. We tried to mix the two experiences and carry out our and produce this guidance in Brazil. Here's the guidance published in 2017. As I said, the first one based on risk assessment. Now IBAMA is working for other species, for worms and fish and so on, but bees were the leaders, and we're very proud of that. As of 2017, the whole system was changed for new products to come to Brazil. Any new product now has to go through this guidance. Before, it was just a test saying it's toxic or not toxic. Now there is a guidance with elements from the European and as well as the American model. This was a great step forward to us. Now we're working on another project. It's still ongoing. It's to be finished, completed by 2021 and 2022. That has participation, strong participation from Anna, because Abelia, her organization, is funding part of this process. So we thought about a number of bees. We have a number of native species of bees in Brazil that are extremely important for pollination of our crops. So we focused attention on these bees. So the model for risk assessment was enough to protect our native bees. So this was, there are other also exotic species. It's not a native species as this exotic bee, Apis melliflua. Is it going to be the same case? So we are developing standardized methods for toxicity testing for Brazilian bees to build a sensitivity curve to see if the bees are protected or not. Here are the native ones, the Meliponini. They're beautiful bees, at least I think. They're fantastic bees. I mean, just to talk about the relevance of these bees, I could sit here for 3 days and pollinization. They vibrate, they hover over the flower and open the flower for pollen. Our crops such as tomatoes and eggplant and so on need the flowers to be open, and only these bees are able to open flowers to get the pollen. Here's the Trigonini family. They are smaller, but they're also beautiful, and they are specialized in some crops. For example, Jataí for strawberry crops, very small flowers. So these bees are very adapted for small flowers. So it's important to have a guideline of protection for these bees also. In this project, because Brazil is so large, we have over 300 species. We selected 3 species that are representative because of the size that, but to represent the universe of 300 species. These species are the ones you see on screen. So we chose similar size bees to carry out the tests. And then we started out the project throughout Brazil. We are here in the state of São Paulo, Araras and Rio Claro in the center of the state of São Paulo. And we have labs around Brazil where we developed a technology in our lab for stingless bees. And but to get accepted at ECCPR, we need to have this replicated around Brazil. So it's being tested in the north states of Pará and different states of Brazil. We have 9 labs carrying out the tests. So what are the protocols? The same as APIS. So we're doing the same for milliponids. And then there will be a protocol for collecting the bees. We're standardizing the boxes. Each hole is a standard size. It's the same system and methodology we use for APIS, but now we're doing for our own native bees. Also, the feeder had to have standardized holes, time frames. Each species has a different time frame, and we also do the replication. The substance for testing also standardized, how to apply the product on these bees. So the protocol has been built, and now we are replicating the protocol to make sure that it is adequate for all the labs. We're using a standard substance for that you see on the screen for all the labs. So this project's supposed to be completed by 2021, but because of the pandemic, there has been delays because we had to reduce the number of tests. And now we have the go ahead to continue. We have to go through all the various agencies here in Brazil, and then it's going to be sent to the European group so that we can see if we can use this for our native bees here. We think that what exists for APIS, if it's protecting our native species, okay, then otherwise we're going to have new legislation for our native bees. The next step, like people are doing in Europe, is to work with the solitary bees. We are starting this out with a partnership with the Federal University of São Carlos. We're also working with solitary bees. So after we complete the project with the native stingless bees, then we will start working with solitary bees here in Brazil to see what's going on with those. So this is what we have. In 15 minutes, it was a brief summary of 20 years of efforts and work. We have so much more. There are so many other details. Our partners, you can see on the screen, we have our projects at universities, all the ones you see on the screen, and we depend a lot on them. I'd like to thank the organization for having given me the opportunity to speak here. I'd like to thank Anna also, who has been supporting us, especially on the financial side. Thank Jens from Europe that has opened the doors to us, providing us with great support so that we could um, study this issue of our native bees here, and my partners at work, and Professor Roberta, who is a great partner. We have been working together in this for 20 years. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Malaspina. When you said that you needed 3 years to speak about this, I couldn't give 3 years to you, but I have spoken to Anna about the need for an event just about bees. I think this is a very relevant issue. There is the climate issue that you have mentioned too. So here, everyone is a witness. Jens, Anna, everyone is a witness. Let's carry out an event only about pollen bees so that people in all levels of society, government, third sector, researchers, consumers, so that the society understands why we are so anguished about the issue with bees. Because it's way more serious. You were actually not adamant enough. So after Green Rio, we are going to meet again. Anna, you are going to help me. Jens, please, I will need your support too. We're going to start thinking of a meeting just about pollinizing bees. I think this is a great idea. It is, as you said, 15 minutes to summarize 20 years of work. Well, but you did it well. And I also believe the bees are beautiful. You said that they're beautiful. I have to agree 100% with you. And their relevance is even more beautiful. Thank you so much.
Ian, seja bem-vindo, welcome. Esteve conosco em
I now give the
2018.
floor to Jans, who has been with us since 2008. He's an old-time partner as Roberta, and I am so happy to hold this meeting. This is proof of continuity of our commitment, and this is also a positive agenda that we're making proof of how much Brazil is involved with all of this work, as Dr. Malaspina has just shown. Now we're going to listen to Mr. Pistorius, who's a reference whenever I speak. Well, the floor is yours, Jens.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Hello, I think I will do this. I will show the slides myself, right? So I'll just share my screen. So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation so far. It has been really a joy to listen to the presentation of Osmar, Professor Malaspina, because it really has been the perfect moment to show already the many subjects of cooperation that we do have. And Maria, thank you so much also for supporting this issue so much. And of course, Anna, also the collaboration with you and all the colleagues in Brazil is fantastic. And yes, let's get this forward. But I think we have a number of topics. And so I'm very happy to be able to speak about some of those, which Osmar already mentioned. I think we really fit. If you look at it, you know, we are the Institute for Bee Protection, one of the sub-institutes of the Julius Kühn Institute, and we are a federal research institution. We work with bees, honeybees and wild bees, and basically in the fields of ecotoxicology and agroecology. And we are a federal risk assessment authority, so we do also, like IBAMA does in this case, the risk assessment, but we are really also a research organization, like with FSK, like Professor Notelli and all the other universities. So we are basically combined. And we also, and I was very happy, Osmar presented all. So the same topic is present in Brazil, also in Germany, the question of bee poisoning incidents, and if you find dead and poisoned bees, what is the cause, and maybe pesticides, which applications, which crops, etc. And speaking generally, we've had a very long history in German bee search, and also we have a long history of German-Brazilian cooperation, actually. There were some individuals that really had strong binding with Brazil, and yes, I think we've got enough reason to keep on with that. We've got state institutes, like federal institutes, like ours, the Institute for Bee Protection, and then we've got a number of state institutes that work from university or other institutions on bee research. And of course, we, from point of bioeconomy, Gia has already mentioned the great importance of pollinators, which is very much important factor for the success of agriculture. But we are also big honey consumers. We import a lot of honey, and I think Brazil exports a lot. And looking at status and trends, we can, because that was a topic of today, we have basically a very different kind of beekeeping, I'd say, but with a number of very common interests and topics and ways how to deal with those. Beekeeping is different. We've got rather small beekeeping, hives and apiary numbers in Germany. So the usual beekeeper has maybe 7 bee colonies, and more than 95% do it just because they love beekeeping and honey. And of course, they provide also the pollination service, but in Germany, unfortunately, pollination service, which is in the US, rewarded in Germany, so not paid for. And so the structure is also very different. Maybe 2,000, 4,000 professionals and about 100,000 private beekeepers. And so basically we get those numbers from the official institutions. But also if we want to talk about the information on bee health, we've got, let's say, different levels. And just to roughly outline, for example, there's citizen science, and there's different activities and scientific institutions, which basically all investigate with different means the health and status of bees. Such as in the course of the year, they look at different times, at overwintering success, at bee health, and they ask via questionnaires the beekeepers, how did it go, how many colonies survived winter, how much honey did you get in spring and in summer, and how was overwintering, which were the losses. And there's a scientific activity, the German bee monitoring, done by a number of German bee institutes. They're named on the second slide. Next slide. There are 17 years investigating the causality of overwintering with scientific investigation, and basically they do real assessments, so not only asking the beekeepers, but really measuring the data at different times in the year, and the pathogen loads and viruses, etc. And also, of course, the pesticide issue. And for pesticide bee poisonings, we have in my institute the bee poisoning incident investigation, and on the next slides I will show a short overview of those activities. Looking at the questionnaire, for instance, from a number of beekeepers all over Germany, you get a number of data, information on the losses in different districts, and basically also information on the forage and the duration of the season. And you can find very interesting correlations with some of the, let's say, reasons behind increasing or declining overwintering mortality. And in the German bee monitoring, as I said, a scientific investigation takes place, and 1,000 colonies at about 100 locations are inspected by trained people, and all these factors like overwintering success, diseases, yield, and plant protection product residues in bee bread are measured. And those bee institutes written at the bottom involved in this for all these years. And of course, you find all this, let's say, contributing factors that maybe lead to overwintering losses and the underlying reasons like varroa infestation, the role of viruses, and we also got the same topic that a number of new viruses are there, or some viruses have changed their virulency. So that is basically the similar picture that we get here. And this is basically scientifically investigated and gives us an impression on the status of bee health and, let's say, the variation also between years, and also gives us information on the most important underlying reasons, and also on, let's say, the regional differences and fluctuations in such incidents, overwintering places. And as I said, we've got the bee poisoning incident investigation in the Institute for Bee Protection, and we get about 120 incidents, roughly said, over the years, and that means about 1,300 damaged colonies as a 10-year mean, which is probably not that much, but compared to the number of colonies. But of course, in Germany, we've got a very, let's say, rather small structured agriculture compared at least to the situation in Brazil. And thus we also have many risk mitigation measures. And so basically, there have been government activities to control the use of plant protection products. But anyway, every year there are some incidents detected which really be linked to the use of plant protection products in agriculture. And we investigate basically in which cultures, in which situations, which exposure routes. So was it, for instance, spray drift or a dust drift, or contamination of nectar and pollen, or overspray of the bees? What have led to the incident? That is basically what we do for all the samples. So basically, from those different levels of information, we get a rather complete picture where we have basically reasons for, let's say, the overwintering losses and also the damages during the season. And that also leads us a little bit more to the research areas where we really need to work on and combine our strengths of Brazilian and German research activities, because we get very many contaminations, also high numbers of residues, partly at high levels. And of course, this is almost impossible to interpret for so many different actives that are used in agriculture. And also then looking at synergistics and adjuvants and safeness synergies. So there are many, many different topics that we need to cover. But of course, the question is often, if we also do our analysis in bee bread, then we look at a spot of time, but we cannot really extrapolate to the contamination of the whole entire colony. So single bees may be encountering such residues, other bees may encountering different things. And so therefore, to model and to calculate and find out what is the real level of exposure and from which exposure routes does that come from is one important topic. And especially also the question, which are the most important aspects that we need to look at. Of course, sometimes you find high numbers of insecticidal loads, but we also need to understand them better depending on the substance. Of course, you may have such that affect also the brood, or some which do not affect the brood, which may lead to, let's say, a silent death of single ones in the colony. I or we all know, at least the bee people, that of course the nurse bees are often at risk because they consume a lot of pollen, and sometimes they may be, let's say, dying at a very young age in the colony, so never reach the forager age. And so these are topics that we need to look at. In most cases, the regular use does not lead to incidents, but of course, that needs to be combined with a good risk assessment system and a good risk management system and good control of such a risk management. And leads to a number of topics. For instance, with the bee species, we've also got very beautiful bee species in Germany, but I really admire and I'm really envious for the wonderful 20,000 bee species that you have in Brazil. I was able to see some of them at some occasions, and they really touch my heart. But also the German bees are very beautiful, and many different biologies, behaviors, and so on. And that really links us. We have some certain species that basically have special traits, and some nest in the soil, some nest in plant material, above the ground, below the ground, etc. And that is basically the similar picture. It leads us that we need to better understand exposure routes, and then also look at effect studies, how we can design them for different bee species. And that is basically some of the work that is already in cooperation ongoing, or where all these labs like Osma's and Roberta's lab and all these labs shown on Osma's slides work together already. But I think that is really a big topic where we need to continue our work. And in Germany, we also got the problems. Many species are in decline. The uses, habitat losses, urbanization, land use, and the perfection of lawns in the garden. And generally saying the loss of permanent habitats and resource availability. Not only because of agriculture. That is a general trend of society that we observe. And sometimes agriculture is also blamed for things that also happens in other areas of human used land. And so we have to look at the intensified agriculture, different cropping systems, the in and off crop, and we also really need to investigate what is actually needed to make such a risk profile for a pesticide complete. Now we know, okay, we have to look at different species, but which and how do we do that, and how many do we need, and do we miss answers if we only look at a few species, and which answers do we miss? That are topics that we need to investigate. And also, then the question, how efficient are the risk mitigation measures that are mandatory, that are the outcome of risk assessment? How good are they if we say for honeybees, basically, do not spray overnight? We may save or protect the honeybees better, but depending on the circumstances, this may not work for all pollinators, and we have to look at it at least. And also, likewise, while we try to protect pollinators from human-made risks, we also want to find out which measures do we want to take or can we take to promote the well-being, the resilience, and the health of bees. And how do we manage basically to measure, to take measures that benefit all pollinators, not only the honeybee, but also. And that's my last slide, because we wanted to talk about benefits of the cooperation. I think Osmar's presentation showed so many topics, and I hope I showed with my presentation also there were so many fields where we already work together. On this slide, I really apologize. I think I've taken the short wrong abbreviation. It must be, I think, UFSK from Berta Nocelli, but we also work with other unmentioned people here with CNPQ and Embrapa, and so this list was not complete, very sorry. But we need to work together on the risk assessment and testing methodology to assess the risks for bees, and also improve our monitoring, I think, and make strategic research on field realistic risks also. And there are many topics such as tank mixtures that we work on, and real agricultural scenarios in different crops. And our corporations, we really want, and I think many German institutions are ready and willing to extend cooperations. And basically some of the topics could be monitoring, methodology, status and trends, and also exposure pathways and the residue transfer in the hive, also including honey. So coming back to bioeconomy and the efficacy of risk mitigations, as just to mention some. Bee management and beekeeping is also a topic, and I think there will be many more. So thank you very much for your attention and for inviting me. It was a wonderful opportunity, and yes, thank you.
Muito obrigada, Jans. Eu acho que cada
Thank you
vez
very much, Jens. I think the importance of our having a space for discussing this exclusively is very important. Your bees are just equally beautiful. So don't be jealous of Dr. Osmar's. May you please unshare your screen?
congelou com a tela ainda por cima.
Well, his screen froze, and so how are we going to release this for the next presenter? And his screen is on and will not go off. Let's try some magic. Choo choo. It doesn't work. Well, anyway, I will ask. Well, there we go. Right. So we will now give the floor. Thank you, Jens. I hope that you could hear us and that I congratulated you for your German bees and German flowers, which are so beautiful. And we will go on with the idea of having our project. There you are, Jens. Thank you.
And your bees are beautiful too. Ana, agora é você que vai arrematar isso e eu
So
queria.
now, Anna, you're going to round this up. And before giving the floor to Anna, I would like to tell Dr. Osmar and Jens that I have received a message from Ms. Sajwad mentioning the importance of permaculture. So let us think about this topic when we design our exclusive bee event, as Gustavo has suggested. Anna, you have the floor. Welcome you all. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my presentation. It is a pleasure to be here with you once again. People with whom we've worked over the past few years and in a very positive way. Jens and Osmar and so many other researchers. So my idea would be to just present some overall information so that we are just talking about bees now, but there are other types of pollinator, bats, rodents, birds, butterflies. Now, talking just about bees, we have more than 1,800 species described in Brazil, semi-social, social, and solitary bees. And we always talk about apis, which is the honeybee, but we have a whole group of bees, which are the stingless bees, which have a huge potential. And one of the studies performed in 2015 showed that the agriculture pollination study has revealed that the impact of this in Brazil is $12 billion. Apis mellifera, the Africanized one, which is more resistant and contributes with the pollination of 19 cultures and also creates a very major economic impact. So what am I saying here? That there is the importance of bioeconomics of bees and pollinators. I would also like to remind you, as Jan said, that Germany is the second larger importer of honey. Brazil exports about 30,000 tons of honey a year, and Germany is the second largest buyer of our honey, not to mention other products, propolis, apitoxin, wax, and other products that are byproducts of bee production, not just apis, but also the stingless bees and all of the other bees, as Jan said. Sometimes they are in the soil and in tree trunks in different Brazilian biomes. In this regard, the Abelha Association was created in 2014, works in producing, studying, and disseminating information on a scientific basis to prove the importance of pollination for preserving biodiversity and the increasing need to establish a balanced relation between honey production and agriculture. There is interdependence, as Jan said, and there are many factors that are leading to the killing of bees, but there is the importance of pollinators and the importance of making them live together. And we also work in terms of scientific support and dissemination. I'm going to show you a few things in management, bee management, and education with apiaries, which work as schools, distance education, and training, and strategic partnership as we have built over this year. And we have built them precisely to give information and provide data to decision makers, honey producers, bee breeders, and especially society. Often society at large knows that bees are important, but often lack adequate information or information as to how they can be protective and what actions can be carried out. Likewise, we have taken part in Green Rio before, and we're grateful for that. We have a scientific committee. We take part in different events. We always meet Yanis and other researchers from around the world because we are always trying to provide a scientific response to bee topics. And this is a way of disseminating knowledge. We have put together what we have called Info Abelha, which is accessible to the public at large, which has neotropical bee information. And we also talk about the interaction between bees and plants with more than 1,800 images, public consultations, 7,500 images. There are visitors, and it is fully accessible to anyone. So we can go in there and cooperate, and it gives you all of this scientific information, making information freely available. We have tried to put it all on in one same portal in order to provide this to whoever is interested, lay people and researchers. Likewise, we make use of promotional dates to release information. So there's a calendar with different photographs of bees showing the different types of bees, bee solitary or stingless bees. We make publications about goiaba, jandaíra, sai, and more recently we have launched this poster showing bees in the main crops and also one on solitary bees. Often they are not talked about. And all of this is in a partnership with CNPq, with universities, with research institutions. So we try and work on a partnership always. This is where the information is and how it has to reach society. A very important partnership mentioned by Dr. Malaspina was a public call launched by CNPq together with the Science and Technology Ministry, IBAMA, and our association, and a public-private partnership to fund research that provides answers to questions that we need to answer, topics that increasingly we need to study. To say that we know it all Jens has shown that timeline of 16 years. There's so much we don't know, the interactions, diseases, impacts, risk analysis. There is a whole series of things which are very important topics. So these are ongoing projects with existing diseases. Is there a contamination between native bees, between native ones and apis, the decline of bees in Brazil, the database for native bee structure, the Malaspina, the project that Dr. Malaspina presented, risk impact, recovery of areas, flight time, and there is a very specific project with acai with two other topics. All of these projects are in course. Because of the pandemic, they are lagging behind a little bit, but they're all in course, and we are already posting the results and making them publicly available. The articles that are being published, and whenever there is a congress, the researchers disseminate information of them. These are projects with networks of 30, 40 different institutions and states in Brazil.
I could go on with a long list with the opportunities of cooperation with Germany, as Jens said, not just BIA, to have a dedicated event to discuss pollinizer, agroecology, climate change, the impact. We could be 2, 3 days or even longer. It's an endless conversation. At the same time, we have opportunities of cooperation that could be done on the framework of the German Brazil cooperation through the bioeconomy perspective, considering the experience Germany has and other countries has of bio factories, bio inputs, bioeconomy. We can join efforts by factories, large scale production of bees for honeybees, apses. We already have technology that we control, but we need other for stingless bees. We need further studies to have a scale production. In terms of health, as Jens mentioned, well, there are diseases in Europe. There are diseases that occur here only. Can that there be contamination, deficit of pollinizing, to better understand not just within the crops, but the various areas, how to recover native plants and areas, and also scientific information to disseminate so that information gets to society, either by a citizen science, a poster, whatever way possible, as long as it's right information, adequate information reaching society. Sometimes it gets distorted, information gets distorted, and we have an incredible potential for studies. We have a very sound scientific community. We have companies that are interested, associations that are interested, so that we can build on cooperation opportunities on bioeconomy, as well as scale production, as well as generating income, especially for small farmers in all types of agriculture, and also in the cities, big cities also. So these are the processes I wanted to touch upon in the 10 minutes. I could definitely give you more details, but you can have access to our website that you see on the screen. You can download information. There is Portuguese, English, and Spanish, so it's accessible to a host of the people. Every time we speak about the beauty of bees, we can talk about this for years. Nano bees that we believe are flies, beautiful bees, all colors or sizes, and native Brazilian bees that we need to protect. We need to get to know them well. And science has a great role in this. Scientific research, knowledge by farmers, traditional knowledge, uh, and our role in agriculture harmonizing with nature. This is a very, very long way that we can build together. So this is what I wanted to bring here, some proposals for topics. And this is a good base for a strong cooperation, Brazil, Germany, put at the service of pollinization. Thank you once more. It's been a pleasure to see you, Jens. And it's been a pleasure to share with you our experience and hear the other speakers. Thank you, Anna. This has been a great panel. Great to start the day. I have now recovered from the stress this morning. I feel much better. It's such a pleasure to see you and see people like you looking after our planet, accompanied by bees. And let's move on. Let's have schedule a meeting so that we uh, start planning a new meeting with this topic. I hope you can stay with us. Our agenda is very interesting. We are now going to tackle another challenge in the next panel, and I invite you to stay with us. It's been an honor to be with you, starting the day with you. Thank you so much. We're together in this. Thank you to each one of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.